Welcome to Immigration Review, your weekly source for immigration case law updates and insights. I'm your host, Kevin A. Gregg, back again to review the week's precedential immigration cases, rummaging through the decisions so you don't have to. This podcast is sponsored by Kurzban, Tetzeli, and Pratt, also known as KKTP, a law firm where I'm also a partner. Whether you are facing an immigration obstacle, a serious injury, or a legal issue in your business, KKTP will aggressively protect your best interests. This podcast is also sponsored by Docketwise, an all-in-one immigration forms and case management solution trusted by thousands of immigration lawyers across the U.S. I really like Docketwise. It makes immigration applications easy by allowing the clients to provide information through simple online questionnaires that are shareable by text or email and available in multiple languages. Not only that, Docketwise provides a comprehensive group of case management features, including invoicing and calendaring, secure messaging, task management, and a lot more. You can learn all about Docketwise and receive a 10% discount on your subscription by heading to docketwise.com/immigration-review, so they know we sent you. And as always, this show does not constitute legal advice and has no bias other than to keep you up to date and to enable you, my dear colleagues, to excel in court. So, without further ado, let's start the review. Welcome, everyone, to this special episode of Immigration Review. In this episode, I speak with Jonathan Goldman, the Executive Director of the Student Clinic for Immigrant Justice, known as SCIJ, as well as 4 brilliant and inspirational undergraduate students volunteering with the program. As you'll hear on the episode, SCIJ has been around for a few years and is affiliated with prominent universities and immigration attorneys throughout the U.S. The program trains undergraduate students in immigration law with the goal of having the students assist immigration attorneys in their communities, and maybe even, eventually, having the students serve as qualified representatives in immigration court. Now, I know there's a bit of a debate in the immigration community about the propriety of having non-attorneys represent non-citizens in immigration court, and candidly, I'm not sure where I fall in the debate. But I do know that a huge amount of non-citizens are unrepresented in immigration court, that EOIR's Qualified Representative Program is a thing and it's not going away anytime soon, and that Jonathan and the 4 students who came on the program are really impressive. If you're interested in learning more about SCIJ or contributing to their mission, please click on the links in the show notes. We recorded this interview over the Thanksgiving holiday, and I hope you all enjoy it. Here's to making 2021 better than 2020. Today we're going to be interviewing 5 individuals with the Student Clinic for Immigrant Justice, or SCIJ. The SCIJ is a training entity for undergrads to provide legal representation to asylum seekers and to organize for immigrant justice. It has programs at Worcester State University and Brown University, and students go through an intensive semester-long training. They gain experience, and they eventually are trained to help represent non-citizens in immigration courts and detained settings all over the United States. They partner with local immigration attorneys in various states to help represent non-citizens. So I'm really happy that they took time out of their day to be with me and to share their stories and all their work. And with that, I'll shut up and turn it over to Jonathan Goldman, the Executive Director of SCIJ, so we can talk a bit more about what the organization does.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for having us here, and also thank you for sharing our work with the Immigration Review community. What really got me in this work in the first place was the fact that I was born in Denmark. I was born in a really small town called Læring, population of maybe 60 people on a good day. And I moved to the US when I was about 2 years old. And that experience of coming to the US, seeing how our immigration system is set up, how my journey is really contrasted from so many other people, has put me on this path of not wanting to be complicit in the ways that our immigration system really destroys people's lives. And so that's really been the impetus for why I even got involved in immigration work. And when I was an undergrad, similar to all the students that are here at Brandeis University, I co-founded an organization called the Right to Immigration Institute. And we were training Brandeis students to provide free legal services to immigrants. And the way we had that set up was similar to a law school clinic. We had in-house immigration attorneys. We had students that would go through the training, and then they would basically be paralegals with those attorneys. And eventually, we also got 7 students accredited. And I kept working there until after I graduated. Ended up being a really successful program. We were winning our cases at just as high of a rate as any of the other area nonprofits. And from that made me realize, wow, we're onto something here. Having undergrads engaged in this work, it's something that's just not being tapped into. And so I wanted to figure out, how do we take that idea, how do we scale that, and how do we actually make this happen on a larger scale? And from that work and from that idea, landed in launching the Student Clinic for Immigrant Justice. And we're really trying to take that idea of engaging and mobilizing undergrads and building on that ecosystem of immigration providers that are out there and trying to create something that is scalable and replicable.
So why did you pick undergrads instead of law students?
There are 3 big reasons why we chose undergrad. So the first is that there are a lot more undergrads that are out there and also have a lot more time to be able to put towards something like this. Being able to, so for example, having students for 4 years, being able to be in a program versus maybe a semester, 2 semesters, or just a couple of years. Another big part is a lot of the resources that exist on the undergrad level go towards programs like this. While there is lots of money, obviously, in law school, so many resources go on the undergrad level that we're able to mobilize in our program already in the work we're doing. And the third big part is just the energy and idealism that comes with undergrads. I mean, I see that with Alexa and Catherine and Nika and Gabby, every single time we're in these trainings. And that, I think, is so important in a work that is so tiring with so many changes and all these nitpicky things. If you don't have that energy and idealism to get involved in this, I mean, you're going to burn out.
You got that right. I tell everyone at our firm, you got to celebrate the wins. You got to. So how does it work practically speaking? These students go through the course, and you guys are connected with some universities, and I imagine you're looking for other university partners as well. But then they go out into their community and they link up with immigration attorneys. Is that the idea?
Yeah, exactly. So students first go through this 13-week long training program. It's a training program that is taught both by staff in our organization as well as guest lecturers that we have come in that are experts on different subject areas. And after students complete that 13-week long training program, they first begin providing assistance through our remote legal assistance program. And so this is through partnerships with Innovation Law Lab and Alocolato. And the idea is that students basically are more or less volunteering with these organizations through their pro se clinics. And the organizations get the benefit of not just having volunteers, but people who actually know something about immigration. Most of our students are also multilingual. And we get the benefit of students getting some experience. So that's the first step. And after students have gotten some experience from that, they transition to, like you were saying, working on asylum cases in their community. And the way that works is that we pair students up with immigration attorneys that are working on asylum cases. And the idea is that students will take on about 80% of the work that goes into that case. We provide mentoring and support as students are doing that through case rounds, feedback, workshops. And then the attorney they're partnered with checks in during key checkpoints and then ends up being the attorney of record on that case. And our goal and the reason why we're doing this is feedback from the attorney community of people being like, it would be cool and all to have all these undergrad law clinics across the country. But if we could do something that built on the ecosystem of work that's going on every day, if we could build out the capacity of an attorney to be able to take on one more case, that's really where something more transformative can come from. And that's why we set it up in this way.
How do you choose what attorneys to partner with?
So right now we are prioritizing other nonprofit organizations first, wanting to make sure that those attorneys and those organizations are getting support. We've also opened it up to other immigration attorneys as well. And we're putting a priority on attorneys that have done a lot of asylum work through recommendations, through networks, things like that. And we're really focused on making sure that people are also pre-screened because we really want to have a really solid first year to see, where can we be more flexible? Where do things need to be more rigid? And that's also why we're having 2 students per case rather than 1 student per case, which is more often what we had done at the previous organization I had started, because we're just like, let's be as safe as possible. Let's be as conservative as possible, because we can always be more flexible in the future, but we need to show that this different way of approaching it actually works.
I know immigration court is a bit unique in that there is the qualified representative framework in which you don't have to be an attorney so long as you are certified by EOIR to represent non-citizens in immigration court. But I guess I'm wondering, when it comes to the ultimate hearings, are the students representing the clients in court as qualified representatives? I'm not even sure if that's allowed. I think it might be. Or is it that they're helping the attorney do so?
So in the beginning, when students are working on these cases, they won't be accredited. They'll just be helping complete the application, or in some cases, helping update it if it's been several years since it was submitted, and making sure that the declaration, the country reports, everything like that is ready for when that hearing comes up. After students have done that work, then we're going to be working with them to apply for accreditation, assuming that the attorney they work with gives the green light, and that also the attorney on our side that's been working with that student gives the green light as well. At that point, assuming that the students are accredited when that case either comes up before an immigration officer or before immigration court, then we'd have a student represent them. This is with the caveat that it depends whether or not students are partially or fully accredited. If they're partially accredited, they would only be able to represent before DHS, whereas if they're fully accredited, they could also do it before the Board of Immigration Appeals and the immigration court as well.
Do you envision a circumstance in which the students do this representation without partnering up with a local attorney?
Down the road, it's a possibility. If we have students are accredited, particularly if we have students that are fully accredited, have a few years of experience, at the very least, what we definitely want to see happen is a pairing up between students who have more experience and less experience. So in this first year of doing the program, it's going to be everyone's first year going through these cases. But next year, our goal is that students who've gone through this first year will be partnered with students going through in their first year. And so there can be that cross mentorship. And one of the reasons why we're doing it in that way is what we've learned from Immigrant Justice Corps and the work that they do, and how they pair up people who are in different years in the program to be able to provide support to one another as they're getting paired up and doing this intensive work.
I think it's cool work, especially for the students who get these great experiences, this great real world stuff to see how law works in the United States, especially when it comes to non-citizens. And I think it serves a big need in the immigration community. But that being said, there are concerns in the immigration community about programs such as this. I'm not even sure if this falls within it, but the idea that someone would be representing another human being and they don't have a bar license on the line. And I'm sure your program is great, but it's not law school, with the rules of evidence and the concepts of criminal conviction analyses, all the pitfalls, or just the confidence that comes with practicing law for many years. There are concerns that under those situations, it could be dangerous to non-citizens. What do you think of that? And what do you do to maybe try and avoid some of those concerns, to placate some of those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, it's for that very reason that we have students pairing up with immigration attorneys to make sure that we have the due diligence, so it's not unauthorized practice of law, to make sure that there's support, not just from the attorney that they're partnered up with, having that attorney being the attorney of record, checking through things, but also that we're providing support along the way as well. But I know, another big concern on top of that is also just, is this actually expanding access to representation, or is this just a cool experience? And, I don't have the answer to that yet. We won't know until we've done this first cycle of pairing students up with attorneys. But what we stress significantly to all the attorneys that have signed up so far is if this ends up being more of a burden on attorneys, then we know this is not the right model. We want to do more of that law school clinic model. But our goal is to really make it a way of either meeting attorneys where they're already at, and it's just like working with one other person, or actually making it so they could take on one another case, whether that's another humanitarian case, or if it's another, more high paying case, and that's a plus for the attorney. We're fine with either one of those instances, but we want to really expand access to representation, because right now there's just, so many people go without representation.
They certainly do. And obviously Worcester State University and Brown University think that you guys are doing a good thing, and so they wanted to partner with you. So congratulations on that. I want to get to some of the students who are on the call as well. But before I do, and I'll give you an opportunity to do this at the end as well. But if listeners want to support your organization's goal, I understand you're a nonprofit and you are dependent on donations and helping the community. How could listeners do that? What would they need to do?
So for people who want to support our work and our mission, they can go to SCIJimmigration.org. That's SCIJimmigration.org. You can learn more about our organization there. If you already are enraptured by what I've shared and what everyone here is sharing, you can also go straight to our donation page, which is scijimmigration.org/donate. And if you also are connected to a school and are interested in partnering with us, we're always looking for schools that are interested, and we're particularly interested in schools in areas where there are not a lot of attorneys, and attorneys are severely overburdened, and really trying to think about how can we be in those locations. And that's why we're in Providence and Worcester, two areas that fall outside of the catchment areas of the large legal community that exists in Boston. So we're particularly interested in supporting those attorneys and those legal communities out there that just don't have those resources to meet the need.
Might I suggest Gina, Louisiana? I want to give you a chance to talk at the end as well, Jonathan, especially if we missed anything about this organization. But right now, I guess I'll start going to these students on the line. We've got 4 students with us. Zoom has made all of this possible, and I really appreciate you guys being with us. So I want to ask all of you about your background, what drove you to the program, and what you like about immigration. And so I'll start with Gabriella. If you could tell me a little bit about yourself, what year you are, where you go to school, and we could go from there.
Sure, thank you. So yes, my name is Gabriella. I go to school at Worcester State University, and I'm a third-year student. I am a communication major with a concentration in digital media production and also theater. So I'm not exactly a law student or anything like that. I was mostly just really excited to join the clinic because it is such on-the-ground work with people. I'm really here just to kind of amplify these people's voices. It is so obvious how broken the system is. So if there's any way I can kind of like really feasibly do something to help these people, like that's what I want to do. So that's honestly, I'm just mostly excited to get to work and things like that. Every week we learn more and more. But I'm just really excited to use all of that knowledge we've all kind of like accrued together and get to work.
Do you plan to go to law school, or is this more something just based on your interest in immigration?
I do not plan to go to law school at the moment. Maybe one day I would consider it. But at the moment, I'm just trying to kind of see where this leads us all, keep working at it. I hope to continue it after my undergrad. So if there's some way to kind of work not as an undergrad under the clinic per se, but to continue representing people, that's something I would really love to do.
And Gabrielle is really getting the brunt of this right now because she's the first one to go. And so everyone else gets to listen to the questions I ask you. But what is it about immigration that drove you to it?
Honestly, I'm simply just a white woman kind of living in a white woman's world. I never had any like personal experiences or anything like that. I've definitely attended like my fair share of protests and things like that. So I've always just kind of wanted to get involved on a more niche level. Like I love going to protest and doing community things, community building and stuff like that. But I really just want to work with people one-on-one. I think that's what it is about immigration. You really get to hear somebody's story and kind of help amplify them.
I agree with that. Before we go to Anik, what kind of protests have you been to recently? What are the issues that are important to you?
Recently, I've been to a couple Black Lives Matter protests, particularly within the Worcester area. We have a really vibrant population, so I really enjoy going out and like seeing everybody within my community. Not only college students are there, while Worcester has like 6 or so colleges, there's also just a really like huge community of people, and I really like kind of going out and seeing everyone. It's awesome.
That's very cool. I'm also pretty proud of myself, and I must admit, even though I went to Boston University for law school, I had to look up and remind myself how to say Worcester because it is not intuitive. But so how long have you been in the clinic, and what have you learned so far?
So we just started this semester, so it's been a couple months now. And honestly, I have learned a ton. Like it's crazy. Like I said, I have never learned anything about law. So just kind of like the basics, and then learning more and more, particularly about like asylum cases is really cool. I feel like we have a really strong grasp on like how to connect asylum cases and kind of represent somebody that way. So like, I'm really excited to kind of like get down to work and put it to practice, because sometimes, it can be kind of hard through Zoom. Like we said, we've done everything through Zoom.
I kind of envy you because, law school teaches you how to think, and it's hard how to think in a certain way. And it's hard to remember how you used to think before you went to law school. But becoming familiar with the law for the first time is a pretty cool experience. It could be very stressful in law school when you're also being graded on a curve at the same time as you learn. So I really appreciate you speaking with me, Gabriella. Maybe we'll come back. If you have anything else to say, please let me know. I don't want to miss it. But we'll go to Anik now.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I originally got interested in the program. I just saw an announcement on Brown University's page. So I think what attracted me to it initially was kind of my personal somewhat connection to it. So my mom was an immigrant. She came here from Cuba with my grandparents. And first she traveled to Peru on a tourist visa, and then she came here. So I've heard her immigration story a ton of times, and I really heard how hard it was for her to gain citizenship. I mean, she waited for years with her family. So I think part of that was a big reason. Like, I was really interested in helping out other immigrants, especially in asylum. So yeah, I think that was a big reason I got attracted to the program initially. But while I've been in it, I mean, like Gabriella said, I've learned a ton. So I was already a little bit familiar with the immigration process, but we've learned so much of like pretty much the nitty-gritty stuff of it, and all the legal terms and different bars that have been implemented by this presidency and even from before. And it's really impactful, and I think an important work to get involved in. So I've really enjoyed it. Also, I live in Miami, Florida, so we have a big immigrant and Hispanic population. Even a lot of the detention centers have been located here. So kind of I've been firsthand witness of families being separated here, and detention centers, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes from my house, and really seeing like how a community can get together and kind of combat that. A lot of people in my city have protested against that. So have I. So it's really nice to see how regular people can kind of make a change.
So I guess you probably live close to the Chrome Detention Center, which is right in the middle of the Everglades. And we certainly have a lot of experience with that detention center. Do you mind if I ask? And if you don't, if you would rather not, we don't have to talk about it. But I think I would be interested in how your mother and grandparents did come to the United States. You said they came from Cuba to Peru. And why did they decide to leave? And what was their experience like coming to the United States?
So they decided to go to Peru first, I think, because it was easier to get a tourist visa over there, and just to be there for a while before coming here, since it's a harder immigration process here, I think. So I think they were kind of turned off by a lot of poverty and kind of the situation there, and I don't think they were as stable financially as they wanted to be. So my grandparents made a choice to come here, but yeah, I mean, what they've told me, it was pretty difficult to apply for citizenship, and just waiting here and kind of not knowing when it's going to end,
And, I think it's important to say, and I always say this to our Cuban clients and our non-Cuban clients, just, what happened in Cuba over the last, century is horrendous. It's horrible, and the kind of country it is. But that being said, there's a lot of countries that have had very bad situations, maybe not most as bad as what many believe the Castro regime was, but they've had very horrendous and authoritarian rulers. But it's only the Cubans who have a very special path to lawful status in the United States. Until very recently, if you are a Cuban and you are able to make it onto U.S. soil, even if it's unlawfully, you would have been paroled into the United States. And unless you had serious criminal issues, you would be eligible to adjust status after a year and normalize your status under the Cuban Adjustment Act. And that is just not the case for any other group of human beings in the entire world. And so I think it's important for the Cuban community to know the benefits that their community did have when thinking about immigration from other groups. And so what drove you to get involved in the clinic?
Me? Well, first of all, yeah, I absolutely agree with what you were saying. And especially here in Miami, we see a lot of people, even immigrants themselves from Cuba, kind of speaking against immigration and more in favor of border security and things like that. So kind of that dichotomy is a little bit interesting, and I agree. I think people definitely should be more cognizant of that. So, but what got me interested in the program, I think a little bit of, like I said, my backstory before, and so I am considering law school, and I'm thinking about a possible concentration in either English or international and public affairs. So part of me has always loved like that social advocacy side of things. So I think seeing a program that you can really first work with people and really see the change in what you're doing is really amazing. And yeah, I think learning about something that I could possibly be interested in the future, like law, and learning more about this issue is really important to me.
Well, thank you, Anik. And what year are you?
I'm a first year.
So, freshman at Brown, getting involved in immigration advocacy. Very cool. Alexa, how about you? And just for all the listeners, Alexa did warn us before that she had 3 chihuahuas that might interrupt her.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm a current sophomore at Brown University, intended concentrator in ethnic studies and education. But what drove me to want to be part of SCIJ was, obviously, it's dedicated to my family. I do come from a mixed status household. I never really intended to be a part of immigration law, even though it was part of my identity, something I had to be aware of. But I was also very fearful of it because it was kind of a known fact that you had to be quiet about it. You can't tell anybody about it. Also fearful of ICE, being separated from family members again. So like all these experiences I had, I try to keep it down. But then like going into college, I started learning about these structures of inequality and actually reading books that weren't a part of a white lens and saying to myself, okay, what are you going to do about it? You know how unfair the system is, but you also have the privilege of being documented. So what are you going to do? And then I saw today at Brown, I saw like this great program and I read through it and I was like, you know what, I'm going to apply. I'm going to get like hands-on experience. I think that will be a great way to like delve into it because again, I never intended to be a part of it. I really intended to go to law school just to be a general practitioner. But yeah, I applied. Luckily, I got in and I'm learning all these great tools, not just like learning the law, but also learning how to campaign for certain issues.
That's very interesting. So Alexa, before we started recording, you did tell me that you are a U.S. citizen, but you're telling me, I guess, that not everyone in your family is a U.S. citizen, or at least at one point was not a U.S. citizen, and that was something that you had to think about growing up. Is that right?
Yes. I like a lot of people in my community definitely come from mixed status households. So you have the U.S. citizen child, but the immigrant parents that don't necessarily have papers are in like any pathway to get papers. You have some people that are legal permanent residents, some who have green cards, certain stuff like that, but not everybody is legal in this. Well, I hate the word legal. They don't have papers in a sense.
There seems to be a movement, certainly at the Supreme Court, even with Justice Kavanaugh, and with certain Ninth Circuit judges and in other circuits in which they're trying to stop using the word alien to refer to non-citizens. How did these concerns manifest with you growing up?
I think you don't just go around life being anxious, although I do think a lot of people can manifest that way. It's like sort of in the back of your head, like maybe one day ICE will take them. Maybe one day, like one accident, one traffic ticket will take your family members away or your friends away. It kind of seems impossible to stop like an authority with so much power from taking somebody you love away. So it's in the back of your head, but you do try to live. Like, I wouldn't say that, my community is very anxious all the time. They have a lot of pride. They have a lot of ethnic pride in general. So they live life to the fullest, I think, stemming from that fear because, one day you can be back in Mexico, and that is a reality for a lot of people here.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Now that you've been shown some of the tools, some of the weapons we have to fight back, to use the law in our favor, what are some of the things, and I know you're new to the clinic, that you've seen that you like, that is interesting to you about immigration law and the law generally?
I think it's kind of a pro and a con of how much the law changes. We had to do a lot of training about how constantly the law is changing. Like we had this infographic of like what the Trump administration has done to immigration law in general in these past 4 years. But also thinking like if we push advocacy and we kind of make that a top priority for our government officials, not just like federal level, but also local level, state level, it could change in our favor. We just need to have more coalition, have our issues being more widespread to people so they can write letters, they can start fighting and like protesting with us instead of just it being ignored.
Historically, there haven't been that many benefits for a politician to put his or herself out there to advocate for immigration reform. Immigrants, by definition, cannot vote. And so they're not a constituency to which they need to care for. My boss, Ira Kurzban, and his colleagues have started an entity called Immigrants List, a political action committee, to put immigration more in the forefront of politics generally, because I believe, and a lot of people believe, that how you treat your immigrants and other of the marginalized individuals is really the character of a country. So I appreciate you sharing that. You are right that the Trump administration has done a lot of things in a relatively short period of time, and they came in with a mission. And I do believe that immigration advocates need to come at it with a similar mission. Catherine, you are the last student. If you could tell me a bit about yourself, and then we could go from there, I'd really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you. So I'm Catherine, I'm a Worcester State student, I'm a senior, and then urban studies and Spanish major. I was born and raised in El Salvador, and I moved to Worcester 6 or 7 years ago. So it was a really hard transition for me, and I think that's what really made me get involved in immigration and wanted me to make a change or help at least my community.
Why did you pick Worcester? Well, why did your parents pick Worcester from El Salvador?
I don't know. My dad moved when I was only 1, and I think he had like some friends and family here, so that's why he decided to stay here.
So you're a senior. What do you like about immigration law so far? Some of the things you've learned in the clinic.
I have learned a lot in the clinic because I wasn't really involved in laws or things like that, so I didn't know that much. But when I first started, I was like, oh my God, this is a lot. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to remember all of this. But it's been really great, and like I've been able to see a lot of things and being like, oh, so this is how the process works. This is all the process that some people had to go through. So it's been really interesting.
In the couple months you've been spending learning about it, what do you think about the immigration system we have here?
I think it's really broken, and it needs a lot of work, and it should be a priority for our government.
I don't think there's anyone who doesn't think that immigration needs to be reformed. There was bipartisan support for that reform, but it was shot down. And so we limp along in the system until we can do another reform. Thank you for sharing that. If anyone could tell me some of the specific things about law that you've learned in your short time in the clinic. Gabriella, what kind of legal stuff have you learned?
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot to learn about. It's kind of been a new way of thinking. Like Anik said, there are lots of little like teeny tiny things that we have to remember and stuff like that. So you kind of keep it all like filed away in some part of your brain and like hope it all sticks. Definitely things like asylum and learning nexus and how to kind of like connect everything together and all of that stuff. Last week we learned something like Anik said, something so small that you now have to write into all of the little boxes. You have to write something no matter what, or else it counts as incomplete. Even if it doesn't apply to you, you have to write does not apply. Why would somebody ever like keep that filed away in the back of their brain and remember it if it doesn't even apply to them? So things like that are just like a new way of thinking in a legal way while not losing that kind of like empathetic side of yourself and still wanting to kind of talk to people as people.
It's crazy out there. The NA thing, I think, is that they're about to file suit on that as well. Just another lawsuit. On top of everything, if it wasn't confusing enough, with the last 4 years, it's been constant lawsuit in federal court on so many of these policies. There's been a lot of successes, but day to day it changes. So thank you all for talking to me. I really appreciate it. I think it's really cool what you're doing. You guys are certainly developing with skills that will be beneficial to you for the rest of your lives, no matter what you end up doing with it. So thank you. So Jonathan, I don't know if we got it at the top of the hour or if I didn't catch it, but could you talk a bit about what your background is as well?
My initial draw to it was not the law. It was really just, this is a cool, different idea of undergrads, sort of being against the system of doing this work. And while there's more programs now engaging non-attorneys in this work, at that time it was 4 years ago, it was even less rare, or even more rare. But as I got involved in that work, as everyone has shared here, it was listening to stories. It was seeing how undergrads flourished in this. It was seeing the importance to people who have a personal connection to this. It was seeing the impact that it had on people who cared about this issue, but never quite had that connection. And I started to see the change, not just in the people's lives that we represented, but also in the students' lives that were doing the work as well, and the empowerment that came from that. And it was really from that then made me fall in love with it, but also gave me an extremely deep respect for the law. I think there is this idea of the law almost that we treat it, that society writ large treats law similar to like taxes and stuff. But what I realize is that law in every way defines so much of our society, controls so much. And so when we don't treat it with seriousness and we are not focused on expanding access to that, that means that so much of society is defined for people and not by people. And so really is interested in thinking about, okay, how do we flip that on its head and make sure that people actually do have access to the system, which controls how this country works.
It's a great thing you guys are doing. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to speak with me today. Jonathan, before we go, how could people get in touch?
For people who are interested in supporting our mission for immigrant justice, they can first go to our website, which is SCIJimmigration.org. Again, that's SCIJimmigration.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at SCIJ Immigration. And if you'd like to contact us directly, you can also shoot us an email at info@SCIJimmigration.org. And we're looking to talk with anyone who's interested in providing support, interested in providing advice, anything. I think the way that change happens is through collective effort. And we're not going to see change in this unless we have people come together, and we want to see you be a part of making that happen. So reach out to us, visit SCIJimmigration.org, and be a part of changing the way that things are working right now.
Bye, guys. Keep up the good work. Thank you all for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So there you have it. I'm Kevin A. Gregg, a partner with the law firm Kurzban, Tetzeli, and Pratt, and this has been another episode of Immigration Review. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share it with a friend and rate and review us. Each review helps new listeners find the show. And of course, subscribe to Immigration Review wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what we do and want to become a patron of the show, please check out our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Immigration Review, or click on the link in the show notes. And if you're interested in an official Immigration Review CLE certificate for 5 credit hours, email me at kgreg@kktplaw.com with your full name and the episode numbers for the 10 shows you've listened to. Also, feel free to email me with questions, comments, or anything at all. And follow the show on Instagram and Facebook at Immigration Review, and send us a tweet at ImReview. That's IMM Review. I'll be back next Monday for a brand new discussion. Until then, I'm Kevin A. Gregg, bringing you the Immigration Review.